Now that spring has finally sprung, Macon County farmers gear up for the start of a new planting season. And as you're about to find out, Macon County's main cash crop over the years will be a lot more difficult to spot later this year. But there's a good reason why.
The season is in full swing. The rains, they've been timely, but there's been a lot of field work. Soil temperatures now up at about 60s or so for Macon County. Looked yesterday, and so, as soon as the ground's warm enough, we have corn going in the ground. And, even though there will be, people say, well, tobacco's gone. Well, there's still going to be tobacco in our county, just not like the glory days, I guess we could say. Probably, in the 1,000 to 1,500 acres, which is way off from what it has been. So, but it is in full swing. We've had a lot of our folks with all the fall, winter rains. Winter was so mild, and all the rains, it's really destroyed a lot of our pastures and our hay fields, and that's what a lot of our farmers are concentrating on now.
As far as the tobacco situation is concerned, for those who may not know, why is the amount of acreage this year going to be so much less than it has been in years past?
Great question. Really this is due to the contracts. Farmers have to contract to be able to sell their tobacco. And we had a just real close, going on 2 years, I guess, a Holder's Warehouse down in, they contracted with a company, and they were the buying station, and so they would give out contracts, and they lost about 5,000 acres, and a lot of that was Macon County contracts. And so all that, those companies are still buying, but they're getting it from overseas where labor is cheaper and, not as many restrictions and things that our farmers have to, fight the hurdles and jump the hurdles, I should say. So the loss of those contracts and is what's really hurt our area. There's still, quite a bit of burley being grown, but it is on the decline, And of course, burley tobacco, a lot of that is filler for cigarettes, and so the decline of that is every year going down. And so anyway, that's a lot of our problem. A little bit farther west of us, they have the dark, and you see the stories about the barns that they fire up to cure that. That's a lot of the that goes into a lot of the smokeless tobacco products and that type of thing. So there's still, that market's still pretty viable and still going over there to the folks to the west of us.
So for the farmers here in Macon County who aren't growing tobacco now, are they replacing the tobacco with maybe another crop or two?
They are. Of course, the big, a lot of the news, the industrial hemp, and we're just really uncertain about it. It is, of course, it was in our farm bill that was passed Congress, and it's a legal crop, and this past February 15th was a deadline to apply for a license to grow that crop here in the state and our county, and we had 130 licenses roughly approved for Macon County. That crop usually goes in somewhere in June, July is planted. It's about a 120-day crop. So right now we have a lot of our producers that are going to shift on we're recommending on a small scale, just kind of test the waters of it, because we think it's going to be here, but just not sure. There's the only thing with that, there's really not the good, like our warehouses or the buying markets for tobacco we used to have. The farmers, producers have to go find their own sources of, to sell it. So that's a little bit of tricky there. So we're recommending the first year kind of just test the waters out, and then hopefully it'll grow and it'll be a crop that it's going to be hard to replace tobacco, as we all know. But anyway, we think hopefully it'll offset some of the loss of that income.
Of course, we've had so much rain, and you're holding some weeds right now as we speak. Talk about just how the rain has affected maybe the planting season or just fields in general. Maybe I think there's been some corrosion as well, right?
Yes, it has. Of course, all the rains in February set a record. I think it was, with Nashville and our area too, with the amount of rainfall in history. With that, a lot of our nutrients in our soils leach out, and a lot of, as you mentioned, erosion, the topsoil gets washed, and a lot of our areas where cattle are fed, cattle's, we'll have over 20,000 head of cattle, beef, cows, heifers, and bulls, and that type of thing here in the county. So it's a big, it's a big economic agricultural crop. The feeding areas, were decimated with, there was nothing else to do. They had to feed the cattle, the hay and that type of thing. So right now we're recommending lots of trying to get, I guess you could say like a doctor, prescriptions there for trying to get those fields back in check. You know, we're putting out some summer annuals to kind of some are using Red River crabgrass, some are doing pearl millet. It's annuals, and that'll provide a good food source for the cattle, but also it'll be, it'll be gone in the fall, and they can go back and seed with fescue like they are always, the mainstay of our area. And, with our weeds, a lot of folks are seeing, of course, the little, they say, oh, that's a pretty plant growing out there in this wild buttercup there growing in the fields. It'll take over a field, as a lot of folks see. That's a good time to spray. That is in the fall. That plant germinates in the late summer, and it'll grow throughout the winter. And then if we can spray, but if you have weeds in your, but we're seeing the Carolina geranium, the hen bits, and those type things, we can prescribe. If folks will contact us at the extension office, kind of identify their weeds, and also give them maybe of cleaning those up a little bit. Like today, a little bit of wind, we really need to be careful with spraying, because you may spray here, and if that wind's coming up, we have a lot of sensitive crops, tobacco greenhouses and other things, industrial hemp, some of those are in the greenhouses as well. If that drift or that 2,4-D or whatever spray, I mean, you can kill a crop, miles down the road. So any kind of day like this, we need to shut off the sprayer and wait for those good, calm days.
Be very cautious for sure, yes.
Yes, sir.
Final question, as far as other crops, corn and soybeans have always been pretty big crops in this county as well. Do you foresee that being the case again this year?
I think so. The market's down with them, and there's a lot of, with the export, a lot of that trade thing going on has a lot to do with that. But last year we had somewhere in the neighborhood of around 5,000 acres of corn and around close to 10,000 acres of soybeans. I feel like, there'll still be quite a bit put out. It's hard to forecast right now. It's still a lot of in debate, but I've seen quite a few fields being put in corn again. So we'll still have a good grain crop average here in the county, but corn may be off a little bit, and soybeans may pick up just a tad. But those, there are markets to sell those. Sometimes their prices are, we have to live with, but those are still being bought, but we have to get those to the grain elevators and that type of thing. It's a little bit of a hassle. It's starting out compared to last spring. It was cool and wet. Our soils have warmed up a little quicker. Today's going to be up in the 80s or so. So it's, as far as the season, I believe it's good. It's going to be a little bit of a tough year, and that's due to, a little less tobacco being grown, and we're having to fill that void, and we're not sure of what this industrial hemp's going to do. And so it's going to be a challenge for the farmers. It's going to be a good year, just going to be a little one that we'll have to sort of get over some bumps and hurdles, as always.
University of Tennessee Extension Agent Keith Allen says resiliency is something local farmers have always shown, and he expects nothing less this year. Reporting from Macon County, Barry Hyatt, NCTV.